to RiSE, the podcast, the show that really helps entrepreneurs rise up and just get the inspiration, the juice, the creativity that you need to succeed in this very changing environment we're all in. Today, we're going up to Goderich, Ontario, and we're speaking to two partners, Mark Hussey, who began his short films as a teenager. So they own a company called Faux Pop Media, Inc. They're in the film and production business. And so, as I said, Mark is one of our guests. And as I mentioned, he started making short films as a teenager, which soon turned into experimenting with computer technology of every kind. He's produced music videos. He's performed music. He's also not only produced music videos and event videos along with live studio and live music production, but he's applied his years of experience and technical wizardry in post-production skills to Faux Pop Media, as well as high-profile projects for the Discovery Channel, Wild TV, the UN Refugee Agency, Yahoo, the Canadian Landmine Foundation, and Paramount Pictures. His partner is with us as well, Randall Lobb, who's a writer-director. He's an educator, former teacher, storyteller, and an independent filmmaker. Having been paid to write in every form of media except tattoos, Lobb leverages his extensive knowledge of screenwriting, pop culture, education, and building audience engagement on his own and through Faux Pop Media. Past clients, again, include Paramount Pictures, Walt Disney Pictures, the UN Refugee Agency, Yahoo, the Canadian Landmine Foundation, Wild TV, Google, the Cartoon Network, and more. Lobb also writes for and collaborates with director Patrick Boivin, but saves his best efforts for his dual role as an awesome dad and husband. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
You know, when we think of the film business, we think Hollywood, New York, Hollywood North in Vancouver or Toronto, but Faux Pas is based in Goderich. Why that area? Why did you make that choice to stay there? And and is it more about peace of mind for you, or is it more, what is it that through all this competitive landscape that you're in, where it's happening in big centers, why Goderich? What
you could see that he has a kid there. He can't leave. Yeah. She won't let him.
That's okay.
He got to stay home and feed his kids.
Yeah, and baby.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No, everything's happening.
Yeah, it's either the dog on these things or it's the kids, or
I'll start. I mean, we were born here. We were born here. Like anybody, you can't choose where you're born. I did ask prior to my conception, would my parents consider moving to Los Angeles? Zero uptake. Clinton, Ontario seems to be sort of a hotbed for places where people who work in farm machinery, especially in the 60s where they lived. So we were born in this area. Mark is also from in and around here. Take it from there, Mark. Why are we still here after all these years?
Yeah.
It's why are we still here? I mean, I think it's just because of the way life unfolded for us, partially, plus we like, the stillness, the quietness, the rural area. We're not the type that need to escape, but more so, how can we, build around us the things we need to accomplish our creative goals and dreams, and as time progressed here, the technology exponentially grew alongside that allowed us to continue to stay here in spite of, opportunities and suggestions even from other people in the industry that, you should move to Toronto, you should move to LA, etc. But there was always this kind of, and maybe it's the disruptive nature or the kind of push against the grain nature of both Rand and I too, where, well, just because that's the way it's done, can it maybe be done a different way? And, it took a lot of years to kind of prove that concept and people giving us opportunities. And once we were let in the door and able to demonstrate that the quality was above and beyond it, beyond what their expectation were. You began to establish and dispel some of those myths, I guess, or I shouldn't say they're myths, but to show a different way of doing things.
It's also that some people would call it a lifestyle. You want a certain lifestyle, but it's not just lifestyle. Yes, we live in small towns, but small towns are more efficient financially. If you're trying to build a very expensive business, you couldn't own the building that we own in a city unless you were independently wealthy, which we are not. The idea that you are managing logistics all the time, that's what filmmaking is. It's just taking things and moving them around and pieces and people, and it's very demanding logistically, and we don't want logistics in our day-to-day life to be overwhelming, because we need certain amount of mind share to be spent on our creative pursuits. And this idea of living in small community means that you're removing a lot of friction that exists in a lot of other businesses that are urban in nature. Maybe people love it. Maybe it's not friction for everybody. I think to us, it would be friction. And we're surrounded by friends and family we've had for a long time. And in that sort of cocoon, I once wrote a line, I was sucked back into the vortex of familiarity. It's that you are making certain external factors so easy that your overbalance of internal energy that you're blowing or spending or trying to generate isn't reduced.
Yeah, and they've done studies on stress, and city life is stressful, from traveling to rising costs and parking, and again, the logistics and stress impacts our creativity. Have you found that your creativity has remained relatively balanced and still pretty high level creativity by living and choosing Goderich as your home, as opposed to, hey, you better move to Beverly, to quote the old theme song?
Yeah, Jed Clampett. I think if you are in a place where you're comfortable, it doesn't matter where that is for you, then you can call on the resources you need to do a creative or challenging or entrepreneurial task or set of tasks. And maybe this is just where we're comfortable, so we backfilled everything else to suit, that you come, I would say specifically in Mark's case, but I know when it happened for me, but he was in a band and they were going to tour, and that's a huge sort of trade-off. The sacrifice is you really can't have things that make certain other elements of life as developed or rich. I mean, he has children. That's tougher to do when you're on the road without threatening your marriage. And at a certain point in time, I think in both of our lives, we knew that the sacrifice wouldn't be as useful for us.
Yeah. And Mark, you mentioned too that the clients you work with, the people in the industry, were really asking you or encouraging you to come move to one of those film centers, and yet you resisted. One of the things we were talking offline is that you had mentioned is that COVID's been a big disruptor, but in this case, it's actually enhanced your decision to stay and be where you are. Do you want to just expand upon that?
Sure. With COVID hitting, what it really did was shine a light really and magnify things that we've been doing and plugging away at for many years, proving that idea and that concept that we could do, what we do from anywhere. And this forced us to have to do it, and forced everybody else to take the same step back in a way. And in that, technology kind of began to fill the gap, and things that had already been established became better, and our workflows began to become more accepted workflows we'd already, like I said, worked on and structured in our own way up to this point. So, it really just, I think, made it more in the zeitgeist, more in the social consciousness of acceptance. That this was okay, and kind of quietened, because people still had to get things done. Projects were still being implemented and created, and content still needed to be delivered. And how do we do this? And so in a way, our absence all of a sudden became in demand during this time.
It was
How
a
do we
little
do
bit.
this?
It was a little bit unpalatable prior to COVID to do things remote for some people, not everybody.
Yeah,
not
some
everybody.
companies.
Yeah, it had already started to shift for sure. COVID just was a galvanizer.
And so, how have the recent tech changes in tech allow you to do the work you do from where you do it from?
I mean, the tech has been changing, and we've been involved, both Rand and I, with technology as long as technology has been. Whether that was the first computers, the first chats, the first nonlinear video editing systems, all of that. We've always dabbled with all of those things, right? Because seeing the potential of it and stayed on top of it. And technology, like a lot of these things that we saw accelerate through COVID, like I said, have always been, or they've been building, the foundations have been laid for them. They've just made better. And thankfully in our community and in our area here, it also has stayed on top of technology. Most importantly, that we have a fiber pipe direct connection, that we can basically be on par with anybody anywhere in the world to get files and assets to people just as fast as if they were down the street in LA, from Goderich to LA or wherever. So, obviously that equalizes things on a lot of levels. And because it's been stable and been made more stable because of the necessity of so many more people being in the pipeline during COVID, it's just been a great asset and benefit.
Well, even think about a tool like Slack, Zoom, like we're doing right now. Everything that Mark has been building for these remote workflows for, like, when an editor who often comes into the station, that's our facility, has COVID, then Mark can set up a remote workflow so that person can work at home. And that's built into, is it not built into Premiere, that you can do these proxy workflows? And just there's every version of the software or hardware that is important can be either retrofitted or refitted or is being built to accommodate these remote structures that we're having to implement.
Yeah, that's a good example, a specific example, say with Adobe. When COVID hit, they offered the team portion to all of the Creative Cloud users. Those of you know what that is will know exactly what that is, as opposed to it being a tier that you had to pay extra for. And in doing so, they got a lot more people into their pipeline. A lot of bugs were detected, and they were working on it, and they focused on it, and it's made that tool even better to where it's 2 years on, really rock solid way to work. And thankfully, Adobe has still kept it that way, probably seeing the value of keeping this as part of everybody's tier. So that now everybody with a Creative Cloud account can work together in a team environment. It works amazing. Yeah. It's incredible. And they're not the only company. I'm just focusing on them because Rand brought it up, but many companies have done that.
Yeah, and it's allowed you to get projects done from anywhere in the world. And what you said with the fiber optic, I guess,
critical. Yeah,
you have where you are also enhances work. What about in terms of the creativity? Has this change in technology and how we're producing things, has it had an impact on the creativity and the creative output?
To me, that's super personal. Like, you see where I am. I'm in my basement. I'm probably at my best when I'm alone in my basement. And anybody can reach me there anytime, whatever time it is, wherever they are. It kind of doesn't matter, because we have asynchronous communication, text me, email, whatever, but I'm at peace. I'm not sitting in an open workspace. I've had that open office before, and it's bad for me. So this has been great for me. I don't know, Mark, do you think you're more creative, or is it just the same for you?
Honestly, things didn't really change for me too much because our office is just a block away. So I didn't have to be away from my workspace, which is really just an extension of my home environment, to what Rand says, my safe place, where I go sit at my desk. It's ready for me to be creative. Sorry, I lost my thread there, but the answer is yes, I don't think it's been difficult to be creative.
And it hasn't maybe changed or affected you one way or the other.
No, I don't think so. If anything, some of the noise is quieter, so you're focused in even more. Like, off the top, especially when everybody was isolating, we had lockdowns and stuff. That in itself, for people like me who like to sit in my workspace and create, and not having a lot of the extra distractions, were actually beneficial to my creativity, and allowed me to spend more cycles on things that maybe I normally wouldn't have, and helped to build and pivot even some of the things that became necessary for us to maintain some success through a time where it's been really challenging.
So where do you see then film production going in this new environment?
I can say one thing that's negative up top.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's good that anybody thinks they can make a movie, or that the democratizing of the tools and some of the production structures that seem to have been made easier, whatever you want to say, more accessible to just everybody. And I don't mean accessibility in a sense of, that vision or people with hearing problems or whatever that you're saying you need to be accessible with. I mean accessibility to just anybody with an idea. That democratizing the access has kind of democratized the output so that everything's flat. And what would be the example of that is you might see some hideous news from Ukraine and then something about Will Smith at the Oscars, and they feel they're at the same level of intensity or the same level of meaning in our lives. Whereas if materials are harder to output, like when Michelangelo carved something, you see the output is commensurate with the work that was put into it. And that reduction of the sense of these, difficult skills and tools and the mastery of those things, there is something lost there if just anybody is putting anything out. Now, the marketplace will decide, right? The marketplace gets to say, no. This person who's just sitting there streaming Minecraft or whatever is hundreds of thousands of viewers, and your dumb documentary has 40,000 viewers. So, that person wins. That's all true and good. But what that means to me is that the way that we interact with certain types of content has been reduced and something has been lost. You will not see movies of a certain type. Everyone says the 70s were the best times. You had these sort of high priests and priestesses of movie making who were exercising these arcane skills. And there's something interesting about that is lost to me in some ways.
Yeah.
Maybe just because I'm old.
It's been diluted then, is what I'm hearing.
I just feel like the idea, this is specifically something that will happen if you're a filmmaker. Like Mark editing something that takes months and months and months to craft, that took us months to shoot and make and put together, and all the work and thought that goes into that is on the same YouTube where someone just flips on a camera and says stuff. And there are groups of people who don't see all the rest of the iceberg of what it took to make one thing like that, as opposed to something that was more simply and easily prepared and thrown out there. So the demystification has demystified some of the content to me. Now, again,
and is that good? Is that bad? Like you said, it will be decided. I think it's like a pendulum. We get all of this deluge, because it is a great equalizer, and I come from a place where, I'll go back to, late 80s and having a multi-track recorder, on a cassette and allowing me to make demos of my music, et cetera. Again, great equalizer. I didn't have the money to go to a big studio, but I could start to, was it of the same quality? No, but you're starting to get your ideas out. So I think there's, out of that too, all the auteurs, say of the 70s, all of a sudden there's a whole, out of that, the million, there's 100 auteurs that arise that would never have got the chance. So I think it works both ways.
No, I don't disagree. It's very personal, but the reason why it's particularly frustrating to say me in specific potentially is that I'm often that front line of discussion with people who might be looking for filmmakers. And some of them might say something like, oh, we can just hire a college kid for that. And you want to go, yeah, you can. And you can also go see someone to do, neurosurgery who is actually a plumber. And in a way, it's pipes in your brain, right? Like, that's gross to say that because it's ludicrous. But the point is kind of true. You want to represent, there's a level of professionalism that is not allowed just by having a tool. Like, you have a skill set.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what drives me crazy sometimes.
Yeah. And we're missing that, the work, the learning, the experience, the creativity.
Well, or even, David, the constantly having to do, I'll give you the example. When I first was interested in Mark's heard this 3 million times. When I first heard David Bowie music, I had to work my ass off to get any scrap. As a child, I had to grab anything, and it was so much more meaningful. And I went through such a process. And I'm not saying that, deprivation is the best sauce or anything like that. But this idea meant that there was a process that was undergone that was important, that was powerful, that you really understood how you got something. And when that's reduced, it just feels like there's an entitlement there. Yeah, you get all the David Bowie you want. You just snap it up. You just make a movie and put it out and everybody watches it. Well, I don't know if that's always good.
I wonder what Marshall McLuhan would say these days,
He would smoke his pipe and he would say, the form indeed affects the content. It really does. And when you allow any content all the time, everywhere, it really does flatten it down. And so
it does.
It's just people the process becomes filtration as opposed to curation. You're filtering to protect yourself, whereas maybe otherwise you would be curating and really developing something that was a little more sensitive to some of the elements of the art. But maybe that's elitist and gross and stupid, right? Like, I'm the age I am, so I'm by it.
We're with Mark Hussey and Randall Lobb from Faux Pop Media, based in Goderich, Ontario. In terms of making the partnership work, how have you both made it work? Because you're bringing in, there's definitely different energy and and approaches. So how have you made it work in terms of a partnership?
That's awesome that you recognize that, and that's why it works. What you just nailed on the head. It's that yin and yang, my optimism versus Randall's, I won't say negative, but more pragmatic, factual. I'm very much an optimist. I always will turn a problem into good. Okay, how do we solve this? And so does Randall. But we have different ways of attacking it, and the both of us attacking it and hitting that nail with different hammers is what drives it home.
Well, Mark, you would know that if you're a hammer, I'm a screwdriver. And he's not going to start hammering things that need screwdrivers, and I'm not going to start screwdriving things that need hammers. So getting out of each other's way in terms of expertise is critical. But the other thing that he said that it is impossible to discuss without discussing ego is that you have to understand how difference is, what it means, and what that can turn into. Like, if you were to say, right now we're doing a pivot in our business where Mark is really supplementing a lot of other people's production workflows. And I know this from experience that sometimes when people come in, they want Mark, they don't want me. And I would actively be detrimental to his deals. And if I was ego driven, that would frustrate me. But I'm happy and proud. His success is my success. And if you can't say that for real, you don't have any business being with that partner. And he would say the same for me. If we had a taco, we would break the taco in half and share the taco. Like, that's baked into the bones. So if you don't have that as your baseline, the other stuff, like what skills does he have? What skills do I have? They're doomed to failure. So he's right, at its root, we're very different. He's an idealist and I'm a pragmatic nihilist or something like that. And this ability to listen to someone with whom you have completely different approaches without, blowing yourself and your partnership up. That is critical.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things, we were talking about too at the beginning was, the fact that you're located in Goderich and not in one of these big, film media hubs around North America has been perhaps enhanced by the recent changes in technology that allow you to do the work you do where you choose to do it. How is these recent changes in technology enabling you to be where you are, to do the work you love, and to still have, amazing content and impact for those that you're working with?
I mean, case in point, right now we're having this conversation as if we're in your office or vice versa. And when COVID hit, we did a major pivot in supporting local messaging, live streaming, and things like that. It was something we could do because we had the expertise. We've been doing it since the dawn of the internet, really, in some form or fashion. So we've always stayed on top of technology, and so, yeah, I mean, the fact that our town has fiber and we have a gigabit up and down concentric at our post-production facility, puts us on par with any other facility in the world. We're able to download things from Netflix, upload things to Netflix in LA or wherever we're delivering stuff without any kind of bottleneck. We're totally on par. So to answer your question, really, it's the great equalizer, technology, if you have it in your community. And our area, one thing that probably would be a factor if we're out in the middle of the sticks and we had no internet, that's probably when we would have to consider relocating or putting ourselves into another position, because it's actually critical for us to be able to stay where we are at. So technology, is on an exponential curve, as we all know. And we've been lucky and blessed in our area that our municipality, has also stayed on top of. We have local telcos, that put fiber in early, and again, other independents like that were ahead of even the Bells and the Rogers and everything like that, where now those larger groups are buying from them. You know what I mean? So I think there's just a hub of creative entrepreneurness in our area too, that we're not the only ones, and we're just grateful that technology is here.
I'll speak to the negative because I think there is one.
Okay.
Just to keep up with the nihilist thing, there's a loss that occurs when everybody is democratized and they think that the tools allow, there are different kinds of carpenters. So what the Zoom culture and Zoom filmmaking, however you want to call it, remote filmmaking has done has flattened some things. We have a very talented director of photography with whom we work, Isaac Elliott Fisher. And he and I work as director and cinematographer back and forth in a way where there's a lot of expertise that comes into play from having hundreds of interviews over years and years now, and just having a skill set. And he can make interviews look really great. And there are a lot of documentaries that he's noticed coming out now looking amazing. But some people in the industry even look at the technology equalizing as being artistic equalizing, that you can shoot anybody can shoot you pick out your iPhone and you can shoot at the high enough level of resolution. So that has been negative. That I've been on calls where you can hear people saying to some degree, yeah, well, we can address that, whatever. They kind of discount the artistic elements that come into play. So that's been one frustration. And the other one is one that everybody feels, is this reduction of haptic face-to-face into a Zoom box has not helped our business at all. That to listen to an old white guy on Zoom is happening right now to an old white guy on Zoom is frustrating to some people in and of itself. But when you take away the warmth that you might give in person, if you meet, they'll say me meet me in person, and I'm listening more. It's more, you know what I mean? It's more intuitive. It's tuned, and you feel like there's a sensitive man who's listening. But on Zoom, it's flattened too, and we feel it's almost more performative, and it really plays into some stereotypes. I am not crying poor about stereotypes. I mean stereotypes about people that are presented in that box and that you don't feel when you're in a warm face-to-face environment.
It's almost what Marshall McLuhan said, you know, the medium is
100%.
Yeah. And I wonder what he would have thought, you know, about Zoom in terms
go reread. It's probably there, right? That the machine is disrupting the haptic communication, and the messaging is flattened. And so you lose the dynamic range of human response. And both Mark and I believe this very much, that if we can get in a room, it's different energy.
100%.
You're literally chemically interacting with people. And it sounds corny. I don't think it's mystical. I think it's biological.
And do you put that element into your work? Is that one element that makes what you do really succeed? You nailed it.
It cannot be stressed enough.
Yeah.
Every single person that we've ever worked with in Los Angeles, for example, with very few exceptions, if we interview someone, they come away saying that was a great interview. We're polite. We're nice to be around. We have a light working environment. There's no toxic energy. Everybody's fresh and friendly all the time. Doesn't matter what it costs us to do that. Doesn't matter what time of day. Doesn't matter. All that stuff that is not boxed up. You cannot show that on a screen very easily. That all comes into play in the room when we're doing our jobs.
And this ties into something you asked about earlier, you know, with the motivation of things and creativity and all that. And to your point, you know, and to Rand's point too, this ties into that too. Like, I agree with him, technology, it's a great equalizer. There's a lot of negatives, but it's like a pendulum swing, you know, but it always swings back to the middle, because creativity is creativity. Take the tools away, creativity is creativity. And that, you know, you mentioned joy, or that's the joy. So everything we do, you know, is motivated first by, I'm creating something from nothing, you know, and money follows, and there's all the business and smart business and all those things you have to deal with. But the motivation, and going back to your earlier question about young people, you know, if the focus is just a paycheck or a good paying job, you might miss something. But each client, each project deserves fresh and new, like Rand said, it's a reset. Let's look at this afresh. How do we take this idea and manifest it, you know, in a way that can be viewed by hopefully thousands of people, you know, that it resonates, that subliminal part, you know. And as an editor and post-production person, I'm always thinking about the subliminal, and I believe that comes through, you know, and I've done my job. If you, David, watching it, don't notice it, but you feel it, you know. And so anyway, maybe that ties in. I agree with Rand.
Well, no, tie it in, Mark. That's embedded even more on its face when you're in person. Like, all of that 100%, stuff 100%, is just hard-coded in our behaviors.
Yeah, that's right. Agreed.
Yeah, because I find when I'm on Zoom, I'm also managing the technology and the people in the room, or whatever, if I'm doing web.
Listen, David, I have a friend who does, and my wife joined it, ukulele for seniors over Zoom. And they have to be muted because they're out of phase. They can't link. They can't sing, you know what I mean, in harmony. Everything's the lag and latency, there's a time shift. It's just that, to me, is symptomatic. I'm not saying it's bad. We're making the best of great tools. It's just that you have to understand that the tools have practical purpose. A ball peen hammer is not a claw hammer, is not a rubber mallet, right?
So what do you see then with all these changes that we've gone through and how we've had to adapt really fast? Where do you see production going in this new environment?
I mean, to some of Rand's point, we hope it doesn't continue on that certain level, but the positives, you know, and even from the onset of this, the positives were really nailing it home, this idea we've held on for all these years, that we don't have to be in remote places. And in a lot of ways, our business kind of flourished, not in the same ways. We pivoted. We're like, that's what I mean by going with the flow. Oh, this is now in the river. How do we deal with this? You know what I mean? That's what I mean by going with the flow, not come see, come saw, bury my head in the sand. But every day is going to present something new. And 2 years ago, when COVID hit, or maybe 3 years ago now, whenever that, all of that began to change, it began to establish things that we've been thinking for a long, long time in the zeitgeist, in a greater consciousness. And it also created a great exponential explosion and focus on some of this technology. So it's brought a lot of our technologies now to a point where, this may mean nothing to a lot of your listeners, but imagine, I'm thinking of camera to cloud, where we can shoot something with a high-end camera, and the proxies and the files are immediately going to my editors all around the world, and they can start working on that, within 5 hours of shooting a frame, no matter where the frame was shot. Like, these types of things have accelerated over the last few years. And again, these are things that just immediately happen. They are things that, just like us, other entrepreneurs, other technological companies have been working on these ideas. And then this gave them the opportunity to focus in and accelerate them. And we're all reaping the benefit of it. And with the benefit, like Rand said, there's negative. People will take advantage of it. A lot of garbage will come out. But in the end, I think what resonates with us as humans is things that resonate with us, things that are well written, well produced, don't dislocate us, but actually engage us and suck us in. So in the end, the pendulum swings back and creativity wins.
But the pandemic also created a permission structure for a paradigm shift. Like, if you think about Mark Hussey talking to Discovery back in the day and saying the remote workflow can work. Well, now Mark Hussey we can't probably say what the projects are, but Mark Hussey is engaged with a national level project that is being shot somewhere else, and he's processing elements of that post-production. And that I believe that couldn't have happened unless there was this paradigm shift, that people realize, you really don't have to sit over top of each other all the time. And that there's a lot of overhead that gets poured into that, and a lot of status quo thinking that's kind of stopping some progress that's useful. So Mark's pendulum, that's important to go back and forth. It's important to find a place in the middle, but you need something that's earth-shattering. So we started as disruptors, and the pandemic was a giant disruption, luckily into our direction. Did it help us entirely? Of course not. It stole tons of business from us, but we were prepared. He in particular was prepared.
And how did you prepare?
I mean, what it did is it accelerated other areas of our business, specifically live streaming. We have done this thing for years as a support to our community, more of as in the background, where we're, what we call hyperlocal information, hyperlocal news. So we have a thing called Stage, which is branded now, which was kind of in the background, where we could, because we'd see, how media, news, and everything is just becoming, kind of up at the top, and the local stories and the local news. And Rand and I and yourself are probably old enough to remember your local channel that told the local story about the person down the street that you knew, all that kind of stuff. And when COVID hit, what I did was immediately begin to build some of the things that we were already thinking about and put all my energy into it, building, a turnkey broadcast set in our studio and things like this, so that we could, in a moment, do breaking news. We could interview the mayor or our local health unit or whatever, or our local hospital, and bring the specific information to our community, which is, Huron County and beyond, bring that specific energy, our information out to them. And that really accelerated the viewership of that. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, hey, you guys know how to do live streams. We used to have a gala, again, all local base. And we did, the Celtic and Roots festivals. Celtic Festival here in Goderich is a huge festival. We've done 2 of those virtually now. Again, bringing artists from all around the world. We know how to do this. We have the infrastructure. We have the technology. and we could broadcast and go live with artists from all around the world into our little studio and broadcast it out. And what people have found is their viewership, instead of 5,000 people in the park, is now 25,000 people. You know what I mean? So and now what we're seeing going into this next year, even though there are live events happening, everybody's going, but we still want some of that. Yeah. We want a hybrid. How can we do both? And so that's where we pivoted to, because Rand couldn't go to LA, and, just to know a bit more, like Rand would be in LA almost every month, just in meetings, on some of our bigger projects. So that's the part that kind of slowed down, and Hollywood shut down, like a lot of things, but that's where we really pivoted our energy. And in the meantime, also just building some of this other post-production infrastructure, that's starting to pay off now this year.
Wow. And also cultivating the relationships that you had prior, and trying to manage and maintain those. That's a form of preparation, leaving people with a good taste in their mouths about who you are and what you do. And you just hope that you can manage that through the remote workflow. So Mark's goodwill that he's bought in the community over the years, he applied that. And hopefully, in my case, I have people down there who care still about what we're doing and saying up here. And you just try to, it's that same thing. Like if you're a salesperson, you always want people to have good things to say about the interaction where you sold them something, you solved the problem and helped them out.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing too is that you've got so many skills. You've got the technology working for you. You've got the creation and the creativity that you need to make this happen. You've got the contacts, the selling, the marketing. And I asked you about, speaking to a young filmmaker, if you were to sort of, again, really sit with a young filmmaker coming out of school, what other wisdom would you share with them in terms of making their production companies succeed? Because it's not easy for them, and they don't have the skill sets you do, the people skills, the selling skills, the creativity, maybe even the technology that they own or the equipment they own. What would you say to somebody, just coming out of school, fresh?
I mean, the first thing I would say is it's great that you went to school and you learned all of that, but tomorrow all of that's going to change and start to change again. Like, you know what I mean? Not to stay stuck, but always stay fluid in learning the latest thing, the latest codex, or whatever it is related to the part of the industry you're interested in. Second to that is what I said earlier. Focus has to be, I believe, the creativity. Like that's what's driving you. Not so much the paycheck. Obviously, we all have to feed our families, et cetera, et cetera. And in our business, unfortunately, maybe there's a lot of lost leader work that you do. There's a lot of things you do. And don't look at those things as, oh, I'm not making a lot of money here. Look at them as I'm teaching myself a new skill. I'm reaching out into an area to make this better than I could have done it even when I started the job, et cetera, et cetera. Always advancing yourself. And most importantly, what Rand said earlier, be kind, be nice, be listening. It's a stressful industry, and there are a lot of egos in our industry. Don't let those, don't react against those. Just do good work. Make yourself better, and I believe, my dad always said to me, your gift will make room for you. And I believe that, and I've seen that to be true in my life. And so is Rand, and that's a slow build. It's not because of a lot of great decisions off the top. I'm right out of film school and now I'm going to do this. You have a vague vision, sure, but don't fill in the colors too much. Don't let it unfold, let it emerge, let it tell you what it is, and walk straight ahead. And when problems, come, solve them. Because if you can solve them for yourself, you'll be able to solve them for other people. And that's what people need you for. That's why they hire you.
Yeah.
And I would say to that young person, it's about mindset. And luckily, mindset is a manageable resource. So a changed posture versus a fixed posture. You're a person who is allowing things to be different about yourself and open to that you learn better when you're willing to change, and you don't come into a place thinking you have all the answers. You're supplementing other people's answers who are, hopefully training you through their behavior and in that business. A huge factor when I was young in the film industry was zero to do with the film industry. It's that you could drive trucks and you could load trucks and you could back a truck up and that you could carry stuff and listen to people and take crap without getting personal about it. And then later you might say to someone senior to you, hey, I was doing my best. That, you're not making excuses, but you just are always in a posture where you're open to stuff coming in and you're not defending your ground all the time. I think that's not just important for young people, that to ablate that sense of ego that gets in the way and be in that change posture and just accepting what's happening and how do I manage this and how do I manage myself to accommodate everything? Because if the company likes you and you're helping them, you're helping yourself. You rise in there.
Yeah. And I've heard that a lot from other film producers, is that you want to make yourself liked, and then the film industry is small, and somebody's just who are we going to bring in? They're going to bring in somebody they like. And if you're an a-hole on the language, you're not going to get the deal. Go ahead, Randall.
David, are you familiar with the smell test? That term, the smell test? Like, I actually believe in that. That's chemical. That there are people who make other people feel plus. You're a plus. And if you're a plus, you get more. Things happen for you because you're a pluser. And I think when bosses are hiring, there is always someone in that room who may not have all the skills, but they're a pluser for that boss. They make the boss feel better. They help. They're supplemental. That's very important to be a value add.
Yeah, I totally agree. You do so much. There's so much in terms of your offering. What genre of films do you prefer? If you reflect now on your career and your work, what kind of film production has made you most proud?
Tell the
truth.
A great question. Well, honestly, for me, it's whatever I'm working on that makes me most proud, because it's the thing that I want to make awesome. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain things that are just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this or whatever. But on the most part, it's whatever it is in front of you. But to go a little more specific, both Rand and I and our other partner in Definitive Film, which is a side business we have with Isaac Elliott Fisher, we've done a lot of pop culture documentaries that are, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, He-Man, Dark Crystal, Cohen is out on Netflix now, Cohen. Anyway, all of these kind of things, and they stem from a desire to elevate things that we think are awesome, like the artwork, the writing, where other people have negated them more to pop culture. Oh, that's just a stupid comic. That's just a stupid toy or whatever. And again, getting back, we love doing documentaries because documentaries allow us to meet the people that created that. And what you discover, as silly as He-Man is, that person who created He-Man or worked on He-Man is motivated by the same thing, to create something awesome, is an engineering wizard, is an amazing artist, you know what I mean? And all of these kinds of things, and trying to elevate that kind of thing. So I think we get a lot of joy out of those projects for sure.
And I don't feel proud from the work looking back. That, for real, I don't look back and go, I'm proud of that. I'm just always just doing whatever I'm doing. Like, process is sort of the thing. So you have to get into a flow. And that flow, it really needs you to look down at what you're into and not look back and reflect. No laurels for me. I don't have that at all.
Yeah.
Mark and I have this thing that we are exactly the same about. We don't want to stand outside the club after our band is done so that we can hear people say, that was a great set. That was a great set. We don't I actively feel uncomfortable when that happens, because it's over. That's done. We're on the next one. We're climbing stairs here. We're not standing on stairs.
Yeah. Kind of like, what have you done for me lately? And you guys, it's on to the next deal. Or... Yeah.
David, I'm not defending this. I know that it's not good. This, like, it's actually detrimental not to be able to look back, because probably when they're putting shovelfuls on my, coffin, they'll hear me inside saying, "Wait, but I said, hang on, what about the?" Yeah.
Back in 1975, I did this.
Well, I'll be planning the next thing. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wonder if that takes you away from being in the moment. To like if you're thinking too far ahead. Yeah.
That's the thing. You have to be macro, micro at the same time. Tomorrow in this minute at the same time.
Yeah.
But if you look back, I believe you're doomed.
Yeah, I think my view is, take pride in what you've done in the past, but you can't live there. It's gone. You'll never do it again, and you probably do it better moving forward anyway. So
and plus you won't fit in your wrestling singlet that you had in grade 10. You just won't. You can't wear your wrestling outfit. It doesn't work.
I think for those watching, they're probably happy with that. For those,
I'll go get mine. Hang on, I'll be right back.
All right, I want to see this. English teacher and wrestling coach. Okay, I just want to shift gears real quick and ask you a few more questions, but rapid fire. Okay. I feel like I'm on Reach for the Top. All right, either of you can take this. What makes a good film, mini documentary, or promotional video?
If we did it.
Okay.
No, tell the truth, Mark. You tell the truth. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I mean, boom. That it resonates with people. You're telling a human story. I mean, ultimately, every story is just a human story. You're not obsessing on the other things, like every detail per se, but what's that human story, and that you allow it to breathe, and you allow that story to emerge in the film, and not to be so set on your vision for a film that when a happy accident or someone says something, I guess this is rapid, so I'm talking way too long, but that you let integrity change the direction of the film because it's important. Same fluid.
Okay, next question. Is the hero's journey still relevant in filmmaking and storytelling?
Every day, all the time. I use it all the time. It's Joseph Campbell was right. It's the core of all religion. It's the core of all stories. There's no way to look at it. Our lives are coded to that. We are all doing it all the time, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and we're living it all the time too.
Always.
In some form or another. What are companies like Netflix, Crave, etc., looking for from film producers like you?
Let's tell the truth.
I mean, it changes every day, it seems. Yeah, I think they're figuring it out too. But what are they looking for? I mean, you hear all the time they're looking for more and more content, and I think they're in that pendulum swing too that we're talking about. Where, I mean, Netflix will say it themselves. We're just grabbing at a whole bunch of things, hoping we find something for everybody. And will that focus in a little bit more as time goes on? Maybe, maybe not. The one good thing about Netflix, and we've worked with them on various projects, they're true to their word in the sense that we're hiring you to do the thing you do. That's their philosophy. And it's a great space for creators. All of the streamers really are allowing creators to, really run with some things that they normally couldn't, with the usual gatekeepers, that were in play, or the formats that were in play before.
And my answer is there's no way to know. It's fluke.
Yeah.
You spin a wheel, and it's not like you're trying to get crowns and anchors. You spin a wheel, and as that wheel spins, they're spinning a wheel counter. You are just trying to be lucky at the right time and right place.
Wow, I like that. Do you believe an independent newbie in the business can make it in film?
Every day. It happens every single day. Mm-hmm. There's no other excuse but to say, if you make something, you can put it more places than ever in human history. And if it's good and surprising, and those things I described tumble together, you'll be the next, the guy Eggers, who made The Witch and The Norseman, and who made The Lighthouse. That guy's like a crazy genius that likes ancient history. And you know what I mean? Like those kind of people, there's room for them now because they can emerge, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to years ago.
The niching of it all. Yeah. Next question is, how long does it take to have a film company that's making money?
Someday we will get there. You're right, David. You're 100% right. There's a chance. Let's do the math, Mark. Your capital costs, your monthly flow, your overhead that are happening all the time, your human resources, and then your business development. And those are just a few of them. You have all your production costs that will often, over the course of a project will accrue to be larger than what you can probably get. So it's like you're building developments of houses and you hope you can sell some houses, but you have to have houses there sometimes before you can sell anything in the development. Would you agree, Mark?
Yeah, I agree. And there's no, someone could like spin the wheel and get a big windfall, but that's not the way to look at it. It's just slow, here a little, there a little, scaling as you can, taking some of the profit from a job and then reinvesting it in something else that'll make you money on the next job, et cetera. So it's just this kind of slow growth, it's kind of like life in a way. You're young and you make $50 and that's all you need because you're living at home or whatever. And that now you got a family, I need $5,000 or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just that kind of that slow thing. So is it always, profitable? I would say it's profitable, but it's like kind of, everything's just to scale. You're doing the same things.
Itself.
That's right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you make. You'll eat it up. And you won't eat it up going home. Like, look at the comics and books behind me, for example. That's a byproduct of doing this. That's research, and you have to be up on all the pop culture, and you might start collecting things that are like fetishistic because you're studying fetishistic things in, when that kind of docs we do. So whatever your company expands to encompass, you're paying for that expansion. You know what I mean? So it will, I believe, always come out to, if you're lucky, even.
Yeah, I agree. I remember interviewing Michael Gerber, the author of the E-Myth Revisited, and I asked him about money, and he said something that stayed with me since. And he said, nobody ever has enough money in there. It's never enough.
Correct.
You could have a ton of money. It's still not enough.
Yeah.
And then I went, yeah, he's right. I'm going to stop complaining about the money situation.
The question is, what are you doing? Like, that's the answer. Like, we know someone who was in a position where they were relatively moneyed, and you know what I'm talking about here, Mark, but they were unhappy with something. And what it was is the conditions for the implementation of that money need to be in place. Like, this is a whole separate question, and we should have a separate podcast about this maybe another time, but it's about those conditions. That money is a way to get something, and people who are getting money for itself, they're never done. Like, you're not. Right now, Elon Musk is trying to make more money. He can't spend his money in his life, right? And he's trying to make it. But why? Because he has these insane dreams that can't be met. There's no amount of money that will solve that problem. He will always fill it. And that's sort of the problem with it.
Yeah. So what's next for both of you? What's next for Faux Pop? Faux Pop.
This is
well,
really...
there's a lot of things on the dartboard. We are moving a lot more this year into heavy post-production workflows for other companies, and that, say, a movie that's being made and we're fitting that slot from Goderich. That normally those slots would be, and I think they would have to be in the city that they're being shot in, et cetera. That's advancing with things finally opening up. Rand's been, even though there's been COVID, he's been having all kinds of chats with the likes of Disney and other companies, and there are always things on the dartboard. So what's next for us, I guess, is the thing that makes itself real. There are some tangible things happening right now, and we could be surprised tomorrow with, okay, guys, we're going to greenlight this one. Get your ducks in a row. Let's do this.
There is something happening. We are normally known for documentary, but Mark's moving into narrative, and I'm moving into narrative a little bit.
That's true. Yeah.
Working with Jessica Patel and Brad Turner, who are insanely enough from Bayfield, also in the industry. We have some narrative stuff that we're putting together with them. Mark's putting together production workflows for narrative films, and from our documentary, our core business, we have a skill set to apply to these things, this process, to any intellectual property. So we're always looking for the next intellectual property. You know, you find someone who has something, you could pick one, you could say like the Mighty Ducks or the Muppets or Dungeons and Dragons. Are we trying to set something up inside some of those franchises? Always pick one. It's like we would be ready to do a Wolverine and the X-Men documentary, or Starbucks and how they're pivoting. Like the same processes that we use, we can apply to the next intellectual property or company. So we're always trying to apply that outside and make a fit.
Now, my last question is this. Are grants still the key to having a viable production company, or can one make it without grant funding?
Well, are you ready for this? Mark, how many grants have we had in our entire time together?
0. But, you know, to be fair, I mean, we wish we understood that world better. I mean, and again, this has just been the course of our business, you know, because most of our business has been US based, really, as far as the core documentary and feature film side of things. We could use a good grant writer. Let's put it that way. It's something that we would like to know more about, and some of the things that Rand's talked about, the narrative structure, working with some other local filmmakers, learning how to utilize the tax credits. I mean, that's something that's really amazing in Canada. So I guess the answer is yes, you can have a business without grants. Because
we've done it.
Have so far.
I mean, this is impolitic maybe to say, David, but Mark has Indigenous heritage, and there are all kinds of situations that smarter people than us take advantage of legal, wise decisions in their businesses to interact with these agencies that we just don't do it. And it's our foolishness and our focus on these other aspects that have been to our detriment, for sure.
Yeah, I hear you both. You're based in Goderich. How, I guess the second last question, how is it, how have they helped you, the economic development team in Goderich, how have they helped you, you know, be where you are today?
I mean, I think that there's, you know, funny enough, in a small rural community, I mean, the stuff that Rand and I talked about earlier don't really mean that much to us, like the guy saying good job outside of the gig. It means a lot to our community. So what you find in a small rural area, you know, that they've been very supportive, to answer your question directly. You know, the local mayors and the county government, et cetera, you know, have been very, very, almost like using us as an example, you know what I mean, for a creative economy in our area, you know, and so that adds a lot of pressure to us to make sure
they've been clients as well.
Do it, and they've been clients, and they support local and all of that. But I think there's a lot of good, healthy community pride around what we do, for sure.
But David, it is true that in those kinds of businesses, there's an RFP process. There's no sweetheart deals. It's not like, you know, they don't call us and say, hey guys, we have this job coming up. It's much more like we see the job, we apply for it. And because honestly, we're at this level that we're at, it's conceivable we're more expensive than other companies. And there are times when we lose jobs because we just cannot do the work at the level that someone else might be, who's a single proprietorship with less gear. You know what I mean? There are a lot of factors, and that's just the way it is. So they support us, we support them, but they're doing what they do, and we do what we are doing.
Yeah, they have a process, you've got a process, and
that's right.
That's right.
It's nice when it works out.
Yeah, it's nice when it works, and you have to make it work. I really appreciate what you this today. This was one of the more inspiring interviews, and I really enjoyed meeting you both. I can see why you get along. I can see why you're successful. You're animated, you're engaging, you're creative, you're fun. So what a joy. Where do we reach you to work with you?
Well, likewise, David, and back at you. It's been a fantastic conversation, and you're obviously very good at what you do, and just talking to people, and really, really, I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I have too. So it's Faux Pop, FAUXPOP.com, right?
Yeah, you could get us by our last names, Lobb at fauxpop.tv and Hussey, Hussey, at fauxpop.tv. Mark's taking you on a little tour.
Yeah.
I am, and I'm doing this for a reason because it ties into our conversation. I'm going to flip my camera.
I know what he's going to show you.
I'm at my house.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can see that train station down at the end of the block.
That big red building.
Not.
It's showing the screen, Mark. Go, just nip it outside.
It's a screenshot.
Anyway, what I'm showing you is
way down the road there.
There's my commute to that train station right there. That's our post-production facility here in Goderich.
Excellent.
So I thought that might be kind of fun.
Yeah.
For the viewers, there's our commute. That's why one of the reasons why we're still here in Goderich.
And you can find him in there. If you don't want to email him, Hussey at fauxpop.tv, you can just go knock on the door and he might answer.
Okay, and we have coffee, right? I hope.
We always.
All right. That was Mark Hussey and Randall Lobb from Faux Pop, a studio based in Goderich, film studio, production studio in Goderich, Ontario. He and his team have a very creative production unit. I'm your host, David Cohen. Join us next week on RiSE. Until then, rise up, impact, be socially aware, and honor your entrepreneurial journey. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.